they were all guessing and guessing, and then I was asking and what have you. So I am now, presumably, I'm now live. I had the screen on and everything. It's been one of those days from the start today.
Yep, we all get them. We all get them.
Right. Okay. So am I live? Can you see me now?
I can indeed see you on the screen now. Well done.
Fantastic. Marvellous. Thank you very much. Thanks
No
for
problem.
for
Sorry
calling.
about that.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, I've just been reading to myself for the last... I've been reading to myself. Presumably, you haven't seen anything or seen anything. I've just popped up on your screen, and there you are, all guessing. He's missing the camera button again. Oh, yes, title screen. Julia is talking to himself. So nothing... That's really bizarre. What happens is I get a feedback here, and when I see the feedback picture, I assume that it's all live. And of course, I forgot to press. There is a button that you press to send the signal out to you, lovely people. So I've just wasted 8 minutes of your time waiting whilst you've had a discussion, and 8 minutes of mine whilst I've been chatting and reading the book. Did you not enjoy it? Why did you not come to my knee and sit around? Oh, my goodness. And not only that, I was addressing you as... Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway, irrelevant. Hello. I will start all over again. So the Burgundy wins today. Yes, sorry about that. Because I looked up and I thought, oh, my goodness, you're still talking about the sodding jumper. I'd gone past that. I was reading and thinking, why are they talking about the jumper? I should have twigged then that something was not right. Anyway, here we go. So welcome to another Bald Explorer reading. If I can be bothered to press the actual go live button, you can actually see me. Crikey. It's been a day of disasters today. Anyway, let's not dwindle any longer. And we'll go back to the book, and I will try and let it go over my head. So this is chapter 2, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you will. I have actually said hello to you all, only you didn't hear it. And I think it's pointless to go through it all over again. But hello. Chapter 2. Wandering back over the fields from Otham, we regained the dog cart and resumed our driving. The horses, refreshed with their short rest, going gaily along as though they entered into the very spirit of the journey. We had now an undulating stretch of road that led us through a pleasant enough country, though its scenic attractions were not remarkable. After a short time, the thriving market town of Hailsham came into view, rising even out... Do you know, when I read it before, I read it perfectly. Not one error, just so you know. Rising out of... If you'd come here earlier, you would have seen it. Rising out of the wooded weald, and looking quite charming, a charming place with its houses gathered around its ancient fane, the tower of which formed a conspicuous feature in the landscape. Now, I got to that word fane, F-A-N-E, and I said, oh, can somebody look that up for me? And I kept looking back going, they're just talking about bloody jumpers. And nobody's looked up the word fane for me. I was getting very disgruntled by that until lovely Julia rang up and said, oi, turn it on. So, presumably... anyway, I assume you can still hear me. I hope I'm not just broadcasting to myself. This is intolerable. I'm afraid, though, that Hailsham gives point to the poet Campbell's dictum that distance lends enchantment to the view. Not that Hailsham is a dirty or ugly town. On the contrary, as we passed through, it struck us as a specially clean and neat place. Two excellent virtues, certainly, but the fronts of the houses and shops had manifestly so suffered from the usual modernising mania as to become monotonously uniform and therefore void of interest, though, if I remember aright, one old home of the Queen Anne period that we caught a glance of in a by-street was a notable exception to the rule. I think the reason why Hailsham and some of the other country towns appear so picturesque when seen on a near approach and prove so disappointing on actually arriving therein is that whilst the street fronts of the buildings have been improved, save the mark, More or less up to date, the rears of the same have been fortunately left much as originally planned and constructed by their first owners, and show consequently an interesting irregularity of form, design and colour, combined with an accidental grouping of gabled roof and chimney, so as to be delightful to the artist's eye. One house may be of red brick, the adjoining one of flint, the warm tones of brick and the cool tints of the flint forming a charming colour contrast. Still again, another house may have its walls weather-tiled, yet another may be of half timber and plaster. Their chimneys may too vary agreeably in shape and size. Their roofs also, both in pitch and material, and even a blue-slated roof may be pardoned when set amongst a wilderness of ruddy tiles, for ugliness in small doses has its uses as a foil to beauty. About 1 mile out of Hailsham, we crossed the Cuckmere, one of those delightful Sussex toy rivers that wind through such restful pastoral scenery, so essential homelike and so thoroughly English. Most of the Sussex rivers might, by a good pedestrian, be explored from source to sea almost within a summer's day, and certainly within ease of 2. And a very capital pretext for a rambling expedition would such an exploration make. I throw out the hint for the benefit of any reader who may be inclined at any time to take a short shoemaker's holiday, as Goldsmith quaintly has it, and thus see a portion of the picturesque and sequestered Sussex seldom visited by strangers. Besides the Cuckmere, that, by the way, leads the wanderer along its quiet banks to the remote old-world village of Alfriston with its 16th century hostelry and pre-Reformation priest house, there is the Rother, the Ouse, the Adur and the Arun, all purely Sussex rivers that have their birth and run their course down to the English Channel, wholly through that rural county. And where you can find a sweeter valley than that through which the Arun flows, so beloved by painters and bepraised by poets. Did anyone actually look up the word that I requested there, feign? What does feign mean? Did anyone see what feign mean? We were playing Guess the Colour of Your Jumper. Well done. I know. I noticed you were playing Guess the Colour of the Jumper, and I deliberately, when I was doing it, I deliberately left this on. So I said, hello, I can see you're guessing the colour of my jumper. Of course, this wasn't going out, but this is what I was doing. And people were guessing, and in the end I said, I better reveal. Ta-da! I said, and also it's so cold in here, I've got a jacket on. That's what you missed. Oh, it was thrilling. Blimey. You know, people would have paid good money to see that. Unfortunately, nobody did, and nobody had. Re-windscreen, it's known as Sod's Law. It won't happen again. How many times has it happened in your old car? Never happened to me, says Linda Kane. Yes, 288 quid. Did anyone find out what feign meant? F-A-N-E. Dave's, is it temple or shrine? Oh, is that what it is? Is that what it is? What sentence was feign in it? Says Lee Lawson. I think it means I would just as soon as. The sentence he had it in was, it looked quite a charming place with its houses gathered irregularly around its ancient fane, the tower of which formed a conspicuous feature in the landscape. And I think Days of Yours says it's temple or shrine, which makes much more sense to me. Anyway, but to return to ourselves, we crossed the Cuckmere at Horsebridge, where some picturesque cottages were gathered round its bank, besides an old whitewashed mill, whose wheel is turned by its waters. Here we turned to the left, bound for East Hoathly, and beyond, as we joked remarkably. For as to where we should go next, we had at that moment only a very hazy notion. There would be time enough for us to consider our next stage when we arrived at our inn and could study our maps and discuss the matter at our leisure. Just then the scenery monopolised our attention. Now, before we go on, this is you'll see in tomorrow's video, which is an appalling video, by the way, that I start the video off on a one trend. It all fails and goes remarkably wrong, and I end up inside the van trying to repair the damage of the video. And it occurred to me, all of this that we've been reading recently, it went through my head, and I thought, oh, it's interesting. And I go forth with an idea of which this sentence here suddenly reminded me. There should be time enough for us to consider our next stage. When we arrive at the end, we can study our maps and discuss the matter at our leisure. And yes, I don't want to say any more than that, really. You'll have to watch the video tomorrow to see what sense of it I'm trying to get at. Anyway, I don't know why I mentioned that. It's a very unusual day today. It's a very unusual day. This was our usual free and haphazard mode of touring. Yet there was perhaps some wisdom in our indecisiveness, for on arriving at a fresh place, if a town, a glance over the local views in a photographer's shop, a glance over the local views in the photographer's shop. How interesting. What a strange concept. To go to a photographer's shop, presumably where, they'd gone out, like, what's his name? Francis Frith, and taken pictures of the locality and put them up on big pictures in the window, presumably, is what he's saying. A chat with a chance acquaintance at the inn, or the landlord, or the landlady, or even the ostler thereof, might, as it often did in fact, reveal to us some point of interest in the neighbourhood, such as a fine old church, a moated manor, or other characteristic old-time home, a ruined castle, a fine view, a bit of beautiful scenery, etc., that might determine us to drive that way, for perfect freedom was the essence of our expedition. Our route was unfettered by any precise or prearranged plans, which he had already mentioned in Chapter 1. Happily independent travellers we. Yes, there's a lot of sort of, repeating of what's going on here, which is probably why this book is so thick and taking so long. In fact, we never knew in the morning with any certainty where the end of the day would find us. I wonder what it's like to be able to do that now. Wouldn't that be lovely to do that? I guess if you're in a narrow boat like Fran and Rich, you could do that and just travel and just go, or a caravan to a degree, or a camper van to a degree, or a bicycle with a tent, or anyway. The old roads lead everywhere. Unlike the despotic track of the rail that goes its own course, which may or may not be yours. We might get on somehow without the railway, but without the high roads and byways, lanes and footpaths, we could not manage at all. Some distance beyond Horsebridge, our excellent road, excellent to the surface, not as to the immediate scenery, that is, led us across a bare and almost treeless stretch of country, known not by the very euphonious title of the Dicker. This desolate-looking district erst formed portion of a vast forest, but erst, does that mean long ago? Erst, E-R-S-T, erst. Is that sort of a before, in time forgotten? Is that what that means? Formed a portion of a vast forest, but was denuded of its timber during the Sussex Iron Age, in order to make charcoal for smelting purposes. It's difficult now to realise that this peaceful, agricultural and pastoral county of Sussex was, from the 14th down to the 17th century, in truth, the Black Country of England, busy with manufactories and abounding in flourishing ironworks. But such was the case. The iron ore is still there, but the proximity of coal with that mineral in the north ruined the southern iron industries, all of which is a matter of history, though the history seems to have passed wholly out of the minds of many. And in many ways, thank God. Imagine if people had decided, we will mine the iron from Sussex. We could be full of these awful big mills and things, and all that countryside could have been gobbled up. I mean, it's being gobbled up as it is, but by modern buildings. So in a way, maybe it would have been better if we had some lovely satanic mills there, digging up these places, than all these new builds. At least the Victorians would have built reasonably attractive things as opposed to these 1,000,001 copycat buildings. Anyway, let's not worry too much. Yes, old-time writers, however, make frequent mention to the numerous and important Sussex ironworks, of which many relics still remain in the shape of large cinder beds and hammer ponds. Camden says, "Sussex is full of iron mines, where for the making and founding thereof there be furnaces on every side, and a huge deal of wood is yearly burnt, to which purposes divers brooks in many places are brought to run in one channel, and sundry meadows turned into pools of water, that they might be of power sufficient to drive hammer mills, which, beating upon the iron, resound all over the places adjoining." That's how he spoke, he really did. During our drive in various parts of the country, we frequently came upon some old hammer ponds, many of which are doing duty to this day to drive more recent, though still ancient, water mills, only they grind corn instead of forging iron. 120 years later, they're now probably millionaires' homes. Besides, we also noted numerous names that unmistakably recall the busy days of the long ago. It's interesting, isn't it, actually, just thinking about that for a moment. Sorry, I keep digressing today, but it's interesting when you think about these old mills that were the hammer ponds were there that came in. Then, as it says, mills, and now these mills are no longer mills, so they'll be either pulled down or most likely they've been restored but are somebody's very plush home, as I said before. But what in 100 years' time will they be? Will they still be homes, do you think? Once they become a domestic dwelling, do they ever change to anything else? Be interesting. A few of the names we jotted down from time to time. These I give here, and they speak for themselves. Hammerwood, Cinder Hill, Cinder Banks, Furnace Field, Steel Forge Land, and sundry others of that like, but of this subject more anon. Close to the Dicker is a long straggling village, ending with a place of worship that proclaims itself by large lettering thereon as Zor Chapel. Excuse me. Adjoining the chapel is a public house called the Potter's Arms, for there is a pottery in the neighbourhood, though what are the precise armorial bearings that place belonged to the potter I know not, for they were not shown up upon the signboard. Here we chanced to meet a talkative native, who remarked, "The Bible and beer are pretty close neighbours, but seem to agree very well together. Bless you, sir, that chapel be mighty popular with people round here, and they drive miles to it on Sundays. Wet or dry, they don't miss the preaching if they can help it. Then the public house profits by their religion. The folks then drives, puts up their horses and traps there. I've counted 20 or more traps are standing outside the Arms of a Sunday morning, and the parties mostly has a drop of something before they goes back home. It strikes me somehow as how the sermons must be mortal dry. I have not sampled them myself, though," and he chuckled to himself as he proceeded on his way, and we went on ours. Shortly after this, we inquired our way to East Hoathly of a lad, and found that it was not so easy to make ourselves understood as we should have imagined, owing to the curious local pronunciation of the names of places. "East Hoathly," he repeated in reply to our query. "There bain't no such place hereabouts, leastwise, I've never heard it tell it." Then, with sudden enlightenment, he exclaimed, "Maybe it's East Hoadley you want," giving a very decided emphasis on the last syllable. We guessed it was, so whereupon he directed us the way thither. Writing of the stress Writing of the stress of the country folk in these parts put upon the ending of the names... Writing of the stress the country folk in these parts put upon the ending of the names of the places, we afterwards came upon a curious Sussex couplet, which I give as follows. Helling lie, chidding lie, Hoath lie. 3 lies, yet all true. So that's interesting. So I called it Hoathly, but it's Hoath lie, chidding lie, helling lie. Now, a long and gentle incline through thick woods, whose cool shade was very grateful that warm summer day, brought us to East Hoathly. We had selected this little town to drive to first for the simple reason that, looking on our map, we found it set away in a district far removed from railways, reasoning to ourselves, from former experiences, that on account of this it would possibly prove to be a place retaining an old-world flavour and picturesqueness, and neither in itself or in its immediate surroundings we might perchance come across something interesting, to use as an expressive term, we might perchance come upon some interesting find, to use an expressive term much favoured by archaeologists, nor were we disappointed. It was one of the chief aims and delights of our journey to explore little-known and out-of-the-way places that possess all the subtle charm and freshness and the unfamiliar. We rejoiced to make our own discoveries and not be guide-booked led. We felt in some measure like imitators of Columbus, humble though our explorations were, for we did not propose to cruise about the new world, to us, of old England in our staunch and well-tried ship, the dog-cart. Oh, did we not? Told you it's been a hellish day for me today, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm probably reading in a hellish way. We felt in some measure like the imitators of Columbus, humble though our explorations were, for did we not propose to cruise around the new world, to us, of old England in our staunch and well-tried ship, the dog-cart. It had already weathered thousands of miles of storm and sunshine, and it was fit to weather thousands more. I'm going to stop for a moment, just to make sure that I'm not reading to myself and to check the time. Linda Kane says, neither of us are listening properly to the context. There is a photograph shop at Bliss Hill, Victorian Village, the Instagram of the Victorian era. Yes, I suppose photos were not something that people were familiar with back then, as it was a new thing, and probably you display it and you all come and go and have a look. It's like when the first computers, people would have a computer, or they could first log on, or somebody had a colour television for those. It's like, come and have a look at our colour television. Blimey, you're rich. What, you got a colour one? Didn't you have to have a special licence for that? Yes, we would pay us a little extra for the colour. God, blimey. Not only have you got a colour, but you've got the colour television licence. What if you watch it in black and white? Well, we still have to pay the colour licence because it's a colour set. Blimey, goodness gracious. We've only got a radiogram, and we don't have to pay a licence fee to listen to the radio. Oh, well, you can't see the pictures on the radiogram. No, and these are all in colour. I never knew he looked like that. So, yes, I can see what you mean. Dudley Sawyer, good afternoon. TurboStream, erst long ago, formerly, I like that, formerly, very good. John F., the chapel and potters are still there. Oh, are they? Lee Lawson says Fernhurst Furnace, best preserved example of the iron industry in the Sussex Weald, sometimes open to the public, not this year, of course. Yes, it's a shame it's not open all the time, really. Dicker Pottery closed in 1957. I have a couple of pots from there, says Linda Kane. Good gracious. You're doing well. Keep going, says Michael White. Thank you. John Buck, good morning to you, sir. Like Sunny Snaps. Sunny Snaps in the 1930s. Linda, I'm not old enough to remember Sunny Snaps. Sunny Snaps, it sounds like some deep-fried, crispy thing that you get in a cone of newspaper. Lisa Fishbourne, keep going. I'm enjoying the listening. Well done, Lisa. Thank you very much. And Andrew Norris, what ho Vobsters. Andrew sadly says, the joy of when home entertainment existed as a piece of furniture, i.e. the radiogram. Yes, and you all gather. Isn't it funny? I mean, there's still a sense of that, isn't there? When you, during the war, you see these pictures of people listening to the radio, or the wireless, I should say, listening to the wireless, and they would gather around the wireless. Now you can put on a podcast out your phone and stick your phone on the windowsill or somewhere, and you can, or a YouTube thing, and you're not, or even this. You can have this coming out of a tablet, but you're not gathering around it necessarily. You could be ironing or doing other things, and yet back then in the 40s, when they were listening, gathering around for the 6 o'clock news to find out how many Spitfires and Hurricanes had been shot down. It's fascinating. Right, now I've actually, I thought I'd lost my space. Oh, here we go. Thank you for that. I'm glad you're all in. If it's a radio program, it's tuned to the light. The light program, says Days of Yore. Yes, I suppose it was. A wireless would have been to the home service. This is the BBC Home Service, and here is the news with me, David Thipplethwaite. Whoever David Thipplethwaite was. East Hoathly promised well. It greeted us with pleasant-looking cottages and homes, each of which with its well-tended and flower-decked garden. Then, as we proceeded on, we passed the Yew Tree Inn, that earned its title from 2 tall clipped yews that flourished on either side of its doorway. But as the yew tree appeared to have no stables attached to it, we drove on in search of a hostelry that had, for in the district where all who travel must needs go by road, we felt certain that we should come upon one so provided. Passing, this is where the Victorian sentence construction defeats the verbs. Passing the rural-looking church, the approach to which was through a picturesque lich gate, we espied and pulled up at the King's Head, whereupon the landlady came out to greet us in the good old-fashioned way. Whenever you go to a next Marriott hotel, or Paris Hilton, or whatever, one of those, I'm not talking about the person, I'm talking about the hotel. Do they come out? Does the landlady come rushing out in the good old-fashioned way? I bet you they don't. Perhaps at the more posher ones, you have the, the bloke in the long coat, whatever he's called. What is he called? The, you know what he is. He's the, what do they call him? Out there, standing there in all weathers, getting cold, ready to receive people. Not a flunky, but, there's a name for it. There's a name for everything. Having seen our horses comfortably stabled, we next sought refreshment for ourselves, for in the 15-mile drive from Eastbourne in the bracing country air, it had given us a healthy appetite. However, when on the road, we always make it a point to see first after the welfare of our cattle before considering our own. Cattle is in inverted commas, obviously he's talking about the horses. This was a pleasurable duty, though, even from the lowest and most selfish point of view. It is wisdom to give primary care to your horses, for upon their well-doing depends much of the pleasure and prosperity of a driving excursion. Yes, the concierge. Thank you, Lisa. That's it. The concierge is standing out there of the hotel. Very kind. There's a man with tails and a top hat. A doorman, says Michael White. Concierge. Concierge. Is that must be French. Must be, I am the concierge. The head honcho, isn't he? The flunky of outdoors. At the King's Head, we were ushered into a cool, low-ceilinged parlour where an excellent repast was in due course set before us. Oh, a nice repast. It's always good to have a good repast. Our parlour, we noticed, was partially panelled with painted deal, which gave it a cosy appearance, a sense of snugness that a merely papered wall can never convey. The window here was deeply recessed, and the recesses was made gay with flowers, the cheerful colours of which were set off by a big pot of flourishing shamrocks. In one corner stood a genuine old grandfather clock, not one of your expensive Wardour Street imitations made to look ancient to the inexperienced eye, of which the supply is ever equal to the demand, and that profits nothing except the dealer's pocket. This clock amused us by reasons of two curious figures on the top that took the place of the usual revolving moon and dial, showing, generally wrongly, the days of the month. The figures were manifestly intended to represent Adam and Eve, clad in somewhat European dress, however, but that is a trifle. Between the figures was a tree unknown to modern botany, and round its stem wound the serpent. The reptile, as shown, one would imagine, hardly likely to attempt any woman, but let that pass. As the clock marked the minutes, Eve, at every tick, with a most mechanical movement, offered Adam a very sour-looking apple that even a schoolboy, who would have thought twice about it before accepting it, then, just as Adam should have taken it away it was jerked from him to be represented again, and so on, ad infinitum. It was a most irritating clock that the story never progressed. Bong. Our modest though enjoyable meal over, we sought out the landlady, for the purpose of having a chat with her before exploring the place, in order, if possible, to gather if there were anything local worth seeing. And we learnt that there were two old historic homes within walking distance, which, from the description, we deemed likely to prove of interest. Having thanked the landlady for her information, we set forth with our map as a guide in search of the old houses that she had described, at the same time affording our horses, after their long stage, a lengthened and well-earned rest, determining on our return to proceed to Uckfield and there to spend the night, unless we should be unduly delayed with our walk, when we felt quite content to stay in our present comfortable quarters, as hurry was no part of our programme. So, am I right in thinking they've got quarters in this hotel that they've turned up, the yew tree, whatever it was, the yew tree inn? So they've got rooms there to sort of freshen up in and what have you, and then perhaps have a bit of a lie down after their meal or whatever they want to do, and go for a walk, have a stroll, and then tutty bye, we're off now. Must be very rich. Oh, the commissionaire. There we go. Commissionaire. That's even better than concierge. The commissionaire. I am the commissionaire. Yes. I'm sorry, you're sort of not allowed in this place. Go and sully yourself in the ditch somewhere for 25 years. Yes, absolutely. Ben Reeve says, I won hospitality tickets to Royal Ascot, and it was that posh a valet would take my top hat when visiting the toilets. Found it most disconcerting. Yes, sir, try to take your top hat. Well, obviously they didn't want you to get caught short and find the urinals full of people, and so therefore tempted to use the hat as a receptacle for that warm, slightly orange-coloured liquid. I'm getting into the lingo now, you see. It's the most disgusting lingo that I've ever got into, but there we are. Right, where are we? No hurry in our programme. Yes. One remark our landlady made struck us. Oh! Said she, "We are 5 long miles from the nearest railway, and that is the charm of this place, though some people would like to have one close by. But we get on very well as we are." Whenever there's a sort of little old landlady like that, I always think of Irene Handel. To which remark we merely added, "Long may East Hoathly remain railroadless." But then we did not reside there. The two old and one-time stately homes we went in search of, one of those was Halland, called Holland locally, we noted, and Lawton Place, both built by ancient warlike family of the Pelhams, and both now converted into farmhouses. Are they National Trust properties, by any chance? Halland, they ring bells. Halland and Lawton Place, I'd be interested. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are just ancient houses. Our way led us at first through the churchyard, from which there is an extensive view looking over towards the South Downs. I have filmed in that church. I think that's St Mary's, the church there at East Hoathly. We found the church doors carefully locked. Carefully locked. I like that. They're carefully, not just locked, but carefully locked. The old verger going up, or the, what's the other one that does the church warden going up there with carefully. Hey, yes, now, which key is it? That one. Oh, yeah. How does he know it's carefully locked? I mean, they may have been locked, but it may have been done in a brash fashion. I love English. And not feeling inclined just to go a clerk hunting, the interior remained unseen. But on the ancient and weather-worn tower, we observed the famous Pelham buckle cut into the dripstone on either side of the door, and in the spandrels above were shields bearing 3 boars' heads, the arms of the Lunsford family, who had extensive possessions at East Hoathly in the 17th century. Thinking about that church, there's a house right bang opposite, which I think is the manorial house, which must be one of those. Is it Lawton Place or one of those? So it may not be National Trust. No, not National Trust, says John F. Thank you very much. Which one is the one that's bang opposite? Beautiful looking place, but very sort of 17th century, maybe 15th century, great big stone looking place, but with a walled garden. When I went there to film with Ollie, what's his name, the bell ringer boy, it looked like it was deserted. The Pelham buckle on an old milestone in that area, says Lee Lawson. I saw the Pelham buckle on the church when we went, so that was fantastic. Justin Jones says can't find either. Fair enough. Yes, so the Pelham buckle cut in the spandrel. The Pelham buckle, here we go, was proudly assumed as the armorial badge of the family of that name immediately after the Battle of Poitiers, in commemoration of the surrender of the King of France to John de Pelham during the fight, it being intended to present the sword belt buckle of the vanquished French monarch, and thereafter, whenever the Pelhams built themselves a home or endowed a church, they caused this badge to be conspicuously engraved thereon. Old traditions are oftentimes written on our ancient walls. Walls have their stories. Walls have ears. They also have sausages. Walls have their stories of the past to tell as plainly as any printed page, and are more lasting. It only needs one to be able to read them aright. Our ancient churches are chapters of history in stone. That's very true. At one window of the church, we noticed a curious, and to us, a novel arrangement. From the sill at the foot of this, a miniature stone gargoyle projected, so that the small amount of rainwater that drained from the glass and collected there was thrown off from the wall beneath instead of running down in it in the ordinary course. This is a most excellent thing to keep all walls as dry as possible. I thought that's the purpose of a gargoyle. I don't know what's unusual about that. It is the most excellent thing to keep as all walls. It is a most excellent thing to keep all walls as dry as possible, especially when, as in this case, they faced the west. But this arrangement certainly did suggest an excess of precaution, or else a too manifest striving after quaintness. Striving after quaintness. Okay, fair dues, whatever that means. How are we doing with our chapter? Are we getting anywhere near the end? No, I don't think we're going to look for a place to haul up. We found that a pleasant footpath across the green meadow led directly from the churchyard to Halland House. Halfway there, in a secluded hollow, we came to an extensive sheet of water surrounded by woods that doubled themselves on its stilly surface. Possibly in past times this formed a pleasure lake, attaining to Hallen Park. Here we observed a man clad in a faded tweed suit, wearing leather gaiters, lazily leaning over some rails, complacently doing nothing, in a fashion that I think only a country-bred man can, or a sailor on the shore. There is an acquired art in absolutely doing nothing, and not seeming bored thereby. There probably is, actually. We imagined that this individual might be a tenant farmer or a gamekeeper, for both dress very much alike, only the former is, as a rule, the most reserved in his speech of the two. However, it's not always safe to judge by outside appearances in the country or in town. Once on this journey we innocently mistook a horsey-looking butcher loitering in the stable yard of our hostel for the ostler thereof, and alas, addressed him as such. Terrible blunder. I shall never forget the fine fury we aroused in him in rural England. Class distinctions are very nicely drawn. We had committed an unpardonable sin in taking a butcher for an ostler. He was a gentleman butcher, he loftily informed us, who kept his own trap and horse, not an ostler who received tips. I do wish people who play their parts on the world stage that they would dress in their parts. Not even a profuse apology would calm the wrath of that gentleman butcher. An offer to shake hands with him was scorned. I will not shake hands with you, sir. Thank you. There was no doubt about it. We had hurt the poor good man's feelings and vexed ourselves besides for having done so. Still, only to think of the various kinds of personages that I've been taken for, or mistaken for, from time to time on the road, and how heartily I have enjoyed and fully entered into the spirit of those situations as occurred. Yes, it's quite funny to be mistaken for something that you're not. A filmmaker is often what people... Hey, you're that bloke who... Somebody said to me, said, oh, yeah, Richard, you're the bald explorer, aren't you? You're a historian. I think, no, I'm not a historian. No, please don't bestow that on me, for my brain is not big enough. Anyway, we're coming to the end, but I'm just trying to find a nice place to stop. I have, whilst being busy with my camera in the field, been accosted as a peripatetic photographer and commissioned to take sundry likenesses, which I have sometimes, though not always, done just to please the good-natured country folk. I have been taken for a commercial traveller, but failed, unfortunately, to keep up my presumed character as long as I could have wished. A theatrical gent on a tour, a guidebook writer, an engineer surveying a line of country for a new railway or some other scheme, an architect, thrice at least for a newspaper correspondent, and even once for a real live lord, and in spite of my protestations to the contrary, and I have forgotten for the moment what else besides. These have been my precious opportunities for engaging in conversations, more or less confidential and interesting, with the various parties of different classes, with their diverse religions and political opinions. Chance threw in my way, gathered thus much information than it would have been impossible otherwise to have obtained, and learning besides to see the world through fresh eyes. But to return to the tenor of the chronicle of our tour, never letting slip the opportunity of a friendly chat with anyone on the way, we accosted the man in tweeds by way of a variation on somewhat unoriginal and overdone topic of the weather, with the remark, "It's a pretty spot, this." Responded he, "I don't know much about that at this time of year, but it's a lovely place in the winter time after a hard frost. There's grand skating on the pond then." It was ever so. People mostly see the country from their own narrow point of view or self-interest. The charm of the landscape, after all, rests in the eye of the beholder. Dr. Johnson, whom it is the privilege of all Englishmen to, quote, confesses that he saw no beauty in the country, only a succession of trees and green fields, barren and unprofitable, after his beloved Fleet Street. The farmer, as a rule, looks upon the country as so much soil, rich or poor, as the case may be. He measures the loveliness of the land by the crops that it's likely to grow. The sportsman looks upon the country as how it lends itself to its special sport. The engineer as to how it will suit his schemes, and so forth. Only the artist, much to be envied being he who looks upon it purely for its beauty. We chatted about many things with the man in tweeds, who turned out to be somewhat of a character, well up in local doings, traditions and sayings, and by no means adverse to imparting what information he possessed. In fact, he was just the very sort of person we delighted to meet. He kindly offered to walk with us as far as Halland House, and as we went along, the inevitable topic of the weather did arise after all. There is no suppressing it in England, for, as a friend of mine once remarked, what's the good of having such a climate if you can't talk about it? Our self-appointed guide was looking in a wise manner towards the Downs when, apropos of nothing, remarked, "The weather will keep fine for a bit." "How can you tell?" we asked, for there was plenty of supply of suspicious-looking clouds about that might mean rain before the night. "Well, you see, sir, we've a natural and infallible weather-glass here in Firle Beacon, that round-topped hill you see over yonder," pointing at the same time vaguely into space, "and I've never known it fail yet. There's an old proverb about it which I can give you if you would care to hear it." We replied that we would very much, and here it is. "When Firle Beacon wears a cap, we in the valley get a drap. When Firle Beacon's head is bare, the next day it will be fair." Observing us write this down carefully in our notebook, probably as carefully as the church was locked, I'm sure, our informant remarked that we seemed to take an interest in it and volunteered another old weather proverb, of which we also made a memorandum. It runs as thus: "When old hens scratch the ground and clouds have tails, 'tis time for ships at sea to shorten sails." Of this we heard later on a slightly different render from a Dorsetshire native, his version being, "Mackerel scales and mar tails make lordly ships carry low sails." How are we doing on the old time front? Nearly. Oh, look, we can get to the end of the chapter if you don't mind, because I wasted your time. We can get to the end of the chapter, and then that neatly peddles us into next tomorrow. The first proverb appears to be near relation of many others of a similar nature that prevail in most hilly or mountainous lands. The precise wording of different proverbs varies considerably, and the names of the hills or peaks necessarily do so, but their purpose is the same, namely that if the nearest height be cloud-capped, rain is probable, but if it be clear, there is a prospect of fine weather for the next 12 hours or so, more or less according to local conditions. Our companion was becoming decidedly interesting, and we strolled slowly on and endeavoured to extract from him any further sayings or proverbs that he might know, but in this we failed. Arriving at Halland House, he pointed out a large flat field in the hollow below. That, we are told, is called the Devil's Race, and there is a curious story related about it. A gentleman, so the tradition goes, was returning on horseback late one winter's night from feasting at Lawton Place. That's the old road there, along the green track before you, close along the side of the meadow. Just as he got opposite the field, the devil suddenly appeared in flaming red and set to work to chase the belated traveller round and round it. The gentleman eventually got home, half dead with fright, his horse being covered with foam and blood, and ever since that field has gone by the title The Devil's Race. Possibly the gentleman was drunk. Possibly the gentleman was drunk, we unromantically suggested, for tradition has it that there were frequent high festivities and wassails held at Lawton Place when in the fullness of its first estate, and that it was considered a point of honour that no guest should leave there quite sober, otherwise it would be deemed that he had not been hospitably entertained. Even the parson, we are told, was not permitted to make himself an exception to the rule, but this must surely be a scandal. Our chance acquaintance was turning out trumps. We found out that we had not nearly exhausted his mine of good things. Moreover, to our delight, he appeared to be in a communicative mood, nor seemed displeased to have a good listener. So we lighted our pipe. They all smoke pipes. Have you noticed? Every single book, they smoke pipes. It's mainly because it's all written by men, and I apologise to the women that we're only reading books written by men, but I imagine more books were written by men at that period because women don't generally smoke pipes. And, of course, if you're a traveller, puff, puff, you've got to have a pipe. I'm going to have to find a pipe. I need a pipe to read the book with, otherwise I can't get into the mood of it. So we lighted our pipe to keep him company. Oh, you're lighting your pipe, are you? Just a moment, we'll light ours. Lovely, what a lovely notion. I've lost my page now. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the end of this chapter. So we lighted our pipes to keep him company and let him do the talking. And here follows a summary of his remarks. Oh yes, there's a lot of queer stories told of the people and places around about, and of the strange happenings that occurred in times past. Not that I credit them all, you understand. There's a wood over yonder called Breech's Wood, and I have heard its name originated like this. Long ago, the parson in these parts was a very poor man, and used to dress very shabbily, one portion of his garments being especially noticeable for their general want of repair. So the owner of the wood, taking compassion on him, left the rent of it to provide the breeches for the parson. It's a funny history, but it's true. I don't get what you mean. He left the rent of it to provide breeches for the parson. Oh, I see. It's a funny history, but it's true. Then our friend pointed out a rounded hill to the right. Oh, that's Tarble Hill, he exclaimed. Maybe you'll find it marked on your plan. Thereupon we consulted our map and found a hill marked in the direction as Terrible Down. Now, when a reduced ordnance survey map, the one we used on our journey, marks a hill with such a name, it is only probable to suppose that there is some genuine history to it, and we confidently expected to hear something strange, if not weird, in keeping with the suggested title. And this is what we gathered. Yes, there be strange stories told about the hill. Some folks will drive miles round rather than cross it at night time, for there is a way over it. It's reported to be haunted by a woman in white, with long flowing hair, fiery eyes, and skeleton arms, with which she seizes all travellers who dare to cross the hill after midnight. Or at least that's what Philip Mercer says in his excellent book, Tales of Old Sussex, which you can get at all good bookshops. They do say as how some lady was murdered there, and this is her ghost. Other people have it as how she was invented by the smugglers who have a hiding place for their contraband goods on the hill, and found it convenient to keep the country folk away at night. Still, others believe that the hill was called as it is because the road over it is terribly steep, and a number of accidents have happened on it. Yes, that's the way to Lawton. It's about 2 miles, if you don't go wrong. Well, good day, sir. Thank you very much. This in return for a small silver coin of the realm which changed ownership, and for which we thought we had received more than the value in the shape of the information given. At first, we felt a little uncertain whether this were a case for tipping or not. It is sometimes a delicate matter to decide, but we acted upon principle. When in doubt, tip. And that is the end of that chapter. Curious story of sort of conversational ramblings, but I hope you're still enjoying it. It's quite fun. Travels by Narrowboat says, sorry, got to go. Nice read. Thank you very much. Alan Leggett says, I can remember the pipe smoke and a lovely smell, but the generation that used to smoke pipes is all long gone by now. Yes, I'd love to smoke a pipe if it wasn't for the fact that it will kill you. Owned by the Landmark Trust, says Linda Kane. Clay pipe, one presumes, no cigarettes at the time. Puff, puff. Lawton Place now only has a tower standing and can be booked for short stays. Ah, interesting. Lee Lawson says, we used to stay in Littlehampton. If you could see the Isle of Wight, it was clearly going to rain. If you couldn't see it, it was raining. Very good. Like it. Attacked by my flatmate, says Sean James Cameron, whilst I was on the phone to the police, who cancelled the call, so I had to phone again. What was that about? Something to do about bins, and this was a warning. Okay. Great. That's London for you. Seen a photo of you with a pipe, Richard, says Linda Kane, and I tell you what, I am a very handsome chap when I have a pipe in my hand. It's I must get one. I have actually got one somewhere. It's that Condor moment. Puff, puff. That ready rubbed. Everyone likes to be ready rubbed, don't they? Puff, puff. Anyway, enough of this gay banter. Thank you so much for watching and listening and partaking, and sorry about the fluffs as ever. We will be back again tomorrow on Friday for another chapter. It's all good stuff, isn't it? And no Vogue show tonight. I get the chance to put my feet up and smoke my pipe, which I shall do by the fireside, I think, for it's getting colder, don't you know. Holland House tobacco, amazing aroma. Yes, not Halland House tobacco, as we were reading. Could have a tobacco-free vaping pipe, says Ben Reed. That's true. You were very young and innocent, apparently, says Linda Kane. I'm still young and innocent, Linda. Don't believe the stories. I don't know what. Yeah. And next week at the same time, more lies and despise. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you all. Very kind of you to come by. Give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, a thumbs down if you didn't. Write a comment about how marvellous it is. Get in touch with YouTube and say this should be promoted so that more people get to watch it. Stick more adverts on it so that poor old Richard can pay for his bloody windscreen that cost him £288. Until next time, when I can have a good old moan again, take care and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.